Good evening, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com here with a special evening update on Hurricane Sandy for Hurricane and Hurricane HD. Check this out. This is a global, or a Western Hemisphere satellite shot. Look how large the circulation and cloud pattern of Sandy is compared to everything else in the Western Hemisphere. Let me take away the telestration. Just look at that. Anybody who thinks that a hurricane is a point on a map, I think this will really change your mind about such things. Granted, the core of the hurricane is sitting in here where the strongest winds are, but the cloud shield extends out almost 2,000 miles away from end to end, too. I mean, just an amazing structure. Sadly, it's going to be one that causes a lot of damage, it looks like, but you can really see the structure of this thing and how big it is, and thus why the concern, because it dwarfs any of the land masses that it is heading towards. And the latest discussion from the National Hurricane Center indicates that the wind field inside the hurricane is starting to expand as it begins to unwind and spread the energy out over a larger area. So while the wind speeds may drop, and I think they certainly will, they're going to be still 80, 90 miles per hour, it looks like, over a very large area, and then that'll also push the tropical storm force winds out across a large area as well. So the forecast track over the next few days now indicates a landfall up here very close to the New York, New Jersey intersection there, that L shape. We're going to take a look at that in just a minute, that sideways L shape up there. But you see that it does try to sort of curve in closer to Florida. There's just enough mid-level ridging in here that it'll bump it over towards Florida just a little bit more, almost certainly bringing strong winds close to 40, 50 miles per hour. Another thing that the Hurricane Center notes is that their wind speed probabilities do not have this type of system in their the way that they interpret this. So this falls outside the way that their probabilities for wind speeds are calculated. And that means that the wind speed probabilities will be underestimated for most areas. And so the bottom line, as you folks here in Florida, I know that southeast Florida has been getting some pretty rough weather today. You can see that on the various webcams, and this is just going to continue over the next day or so. And it's going to take at least 48 more hours for Sandy to finally approach and eventually cross 30 degrees of latitude. Then it starts to head off to the northeast. A big blocking area of high pressure builds in over the Atlantic, and the low forms here, big upper level low over the eastern United States, and the combination of these two with the high sitting out here and the low over the eastern U.S., Sandy will pinwheel back in and strike the northeast coastline, mid-Atlantic states as a very large hurricane. That doesn't mean it's going to be very strong, but that doesn't matter. It's going to be very devastating with lots of trees down, millions of people, with an S, millions, without power, snow in the higher elevations once it gets inland, and a coastal storm surge that we're going to really need to talk about in the coming days. For right now, let's take a look, though, at the next few days here, looking at a map with the wind field on it. You can see that the tropical storm force winds extend out pretty far, but again, this may be underestimated overall. Even though this is the extent of the tropical storm force winds, the probabilities of them affecting southeast Florida and the east coast here of Florida harder to predict because of the structure of the hurricane. And speaking of the hurricane force winds at least staying pretty confined towards the center, but those too will begin to expand. So this is Sandy at its probable closest approach to Florida sometime tomorrow into Saturday, late tomorrow night into Saturday. And you can see that big wind field there. So you folks in Florida, you have another day to day and a half of what you've been experiencing today, and that will only increase as this expands larger, gets larger. So be vigilant, okay? Watch it when you're driving around in these conditions. This is a prolonged event, and it is really stirring up the ocean out there. Then, as it moves farther up the coast, you see the impacts here to the Carolinas. Tropical storm force winds easily reaching most areas. This is I-95 up through here, roughly. So a good chunk of the area east of I-95 under tropical storm force winds, and hurricane force winds not too far at all off the North Carolina Outer Banks here as Sandy starts to move northeast out of the southwest Atlantic and along the eastern seaboard. Next, and this is the part that's still up for debate as to what the exact impacts will be, Sandy starts to head up east of Cape Hatteras here, see it right there, and then that high pressure and then the low pressure over here doing the squeeze play, sending Sandy back to the northwest probably next Tuesday or so, a week away from elections. That's going to be interesting to see. If so many people are without power, does that affect the elections? Hurricanes and politics? You bet. This could get very political on a lot of levels. I'm not going to discuss that because that's not my expertise. But when you get a hurricane moving into a large population center, including the effects here in Washington and the upcoming election, this has giant ramifications for the country as a whole. I'm telling you, this will be a memorable event. And don't be fooled by seeing, oh, only 65 miles per hour once it's inland and it's 80 miles an hour out here. 80 miles an hour, yeah, but it's 80 miles an hour over a huge area of coastline, and the water's just going to get piled up. Let's talk about that part for just a moment. Assuming that the track of Sandy does come up kind of like this and then bends into New Jersey like that. If we draw basically what the diagram would look like and divide it into quadrants, this is your right front quadrant relative to the track. So the wind will be onshore in this region for the entire time. You know, you'll have an east wind at first as Sandy approaches from the south, and then it'll turn around to the northeast, and that'll push Long Island Sound back down towards New York City. And at the same time, the hurricane will be piling up the water all ahead of itself like this, smashing it into this right angle up here, the New York Bight. And that is a big, big, big problem, because you'll also have that east to northeast wind piling Long Island Sound down here into New York City, and then the east wind and the southeast wind and the ocean coming in at the same time, piling up the Atlantic up here north of New Jersey. So that paints a picture of potentially a very bad storm surge, if we zoom in here, for areas like Staten Island, New York City itself, near JFK Airport, all along the west side of Long Island, and then to New Jersey here. When it comes in, if it goes like this, when you look at that right front quadrant, wow, this area right here could be absolutely hammered with storm surge. And then, as I mentioned, the Long Island Sound getting pushed in this way. So just too many things to keep up with. Don't focus on this as where's the center going to make landfall. Think of it as this entire region up here is going to get blasted by a large hurricane with conditions that will last for 2 days or more, bringing wind, which will topple trees, down power lines, cause all kinds of problems, rainfall that'll be in excess of probably 5 to 10 inches in many places, a storm surge driven by that wind into the land from the ocean that will cause significant beach erosion, coastal flooding, the destruction of property along the coast, and the potential to drown people if they are not vigilant. This is a huge problem. It does not take a Hurricane Katrina to cause Hurricane Katrina type disruption for the United States. And I try not to be any type of a fearmongerer, okay, but the facts are this is a beast of a storm, and it is headed for a location up here where people are ill prepared because they don't have the experience. It's not their fault. You just don't have that much experience. If a blizzard, 20 inches of snow is going to fall in West Palm Beach down to Miami, those people will be caught unprepared. Not their fault. It doesn't happen. So that's why. Okay, you get the analogy. It's just not a common occurrence, thank goodness. But people in this region really need to be ready for this and start to take action, start to think about their plans now. I will have another video blog in the morning, and then one tomorrow afternoon early, and then it is time for my crew and I to hit the road, getting up to the Outer Banks of North Carolina to set up some monitoring equipment, and then on up to somewhere in the Northeast to be there for the landfall. You can follow along in HurricaneTrack.com on the website. We have our own app as well. We partner with Hurricane and Hurricane HD on these video blogs, but you can certainly get the Hurricane Track, all one word, app at the App Store, which will give you very good landfall information because we're going to be there on the ground, and I'll be providing video blogs for both of these apps, all three sets, Hurricane, Hurricane HD, and Hurricane Track. So you'll have a great set of tools to keep up with Sandy as it moves in towards the eastern United States. That is it for tonight. Again, I'm Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. Thanks for watching this video. Hopefully you learned something from it, and it'll motivate you to prepare if you're in the path of Sandy, and I'll have some more information for you in the morning.